The Saboteur probably has one of the saddest stories behind the scenes in the video game industry. It was the final game developed by Pandemic Studios, a beloved developer from a bygone era of the 6th and 7th console generations. You might remember them for Star Wars Battlefront, Destroy All Humans, Full Spectrum Warrior, and The Mercenaries, all of which have one thing in common. They're all pretty good games. The Saboteur is no different. The game oozes character and you can feel the developer's passion in every detail at every corner. Unfortunately though, the Saboteur is somewhat unfinished, lacking the polish it deserved, and the blame of course is largely on EA Games. EA closed down Pandemic Studios before they could fully complete the game, and initially they didn't even plan to release it. The story goes that a few passionate and newly unemployed developers working basically for free managed to get this gem in a good enough state and convinced EA to release the game for holiday season of 2009. The Saboteur is one of my favorite games of all time, and this is going to be a personal video. Let me show you the good, the a bit less good, and the beautiful aspects of this game. We'll take a deep dive, analyzing what's there, what could have been, and uncovering some stuff behind the curtain. There's a lot to discuss here, and especially if you've never played the Saboteur, I'm dying to tell you all about it.
You ever handled explosives before?
I handled a bombshell once. Turned out she was married.
Is he serious?
So what even is the Saboteur? If I was a bit cynical, I could just describe it as a mix of Grand Theft Auto, Assassin's Creed, Hitman, Just Cause, Mercenaries, and yeah, while the game definitely borrows some gameplay concepts from each of those, it definitely makes them its own and packages it all in this amazing art style and atmosphere. The setting here is Nazi-occupied Paris, along with some countryside and smaller towns and villages. Our hero, Sean Devlin, is part of the French resistance, and it's up to them to liberate the city block by block, street by street. Every Nazi installation, outpost, tank, fuel depot, all of this can be sabotaged, and it's up to the player to decide whether to go in sneaky or call in his resistance buddies and go guns blazing. Liberating Paris may be the player's goal and that of the resistance, but Sean is on a much more personal quest. His mission is very clear: avenge the death of his close friend Jules by killing the ever so hateable Aryan high-ranking officer Kurt Dirker. Saving Paris and working with the resistance is just a means to get to Dirker.
You're here because I require a favor from you, Mr. Devlin. In exchange, I will see to it that your criminal records are wiped clean.
Not a chance.
And deliver Kurt Dirker to you on a silver platter.
What is it you want done?
As you can see, a lot of this game is in this stylized black and white filter, which looks somewhat like Sin City. The parts of the map that are under occupation by the Nazis will be monochrome, with a constant storm and clouds above it. The liberated parts of the map, however, will have this beautiful sunny sky and warm color palette. As you fight back the invaders, more and more of the city will regain its color and its life. Key parts of the city, like Nazi headquarters or any other very important places, are liberated in the main story or side missions. Once you destroy a key Nazi installation or kill off a particularly vile general, the game will pull the camera back and show that part of the city shed the cloudy weather and the black and white filter as to indicate life coming back to that part of town and the residents getting their will to fight back. This never really got old for the entirety of the game's 10 to 15 hours runtime, depending on how much side content you're willing to engage in.
So, did you kill the bastard? No, not yet. It takes a hard heart and a steady hand to face a man like Dirker. They should have sent a real soldier.
Too bad you were too busy wanking off in church.
Now this next topic is the reason why I'm even making this video. The atmosphere in the Saboteur is unmatched. While you're driving through the occupied streets, under the towering Nazi structures, between fences, checkpoints, patrols, combined with the image filter devoid of any color, except the imposing red on the Nazi flags and armbands, it truly gives you this claustrophobic and anxious feeling. The citizens are wary and scared as they're walking the cobblestone streets among the Nazi patrols that frequently show off their vile antics. Blood is also accented and pools of red will stick out under the bodies. The imagery is very powerful and effectively portrays a life in a city under oppression. The Saboteur also doesn't limit itself with 100% historical accuracy when it comes to portraying the Nazis. Here you'll see a lot of prototype weaponry in use as standard, like these behemoths of tanks, gigantic artillery, V2 rockets, and also superhuman soldiers, which add to the terror and actually reminded me a bit of Wolfenstein. Only other color you'll see is the lights in the windows and some shades of blue on friendly characters and members of the resistance, which stick out like beacons of life in the dark. On the other hand, when you kick some Nazi ass, the liberated districts adopt this warm and cozy color palette. The use of these yellowish colors for all the buildings and roads had to have been a stylistic choice to really highlight the contrast between the beauty and liveliness of Paris and the bleak and suffocating oppression of Nazi-controlled areas. The graphics rendering techniques are really nothing special here. The game's shadows aren't all that crisp, there's no ambient occlusion, no screen space reflections or anything like that. The geometry and textures can also sometimes look rough, and it doesn't even matter, as the art direction of the game is so unique and effective that the game looks beautiful despite its technological shortcomings. Not everything needs to look super realistic in order to look good. The color filler of the Saboteur is usually the main point of discourse since the game released, but another key component to the overall atmosphere has to be the stellar music, both licensed and the original score. The game doesn't seem to even have a moment of silence, which I absolutely love. While you're exploring the streets and rooftops for potential targets to destroy, a calming or a bit more tense score will play, depending on which part of the city you're in. As you enter a restricted zone or a base, the music will shift to a more suspenseful track. When you trigger an alarm, the music again changes to a combat theme and continues changing to more and more intense tracks as your alarm level rises. And the changes in music are complemented perfectly by recognizable sound effects and little tunes that play when something from a gameplay perspective occurs. Either you've escaped an alarm, or an enemy has started detecting you or suspecting your disguise. All of these little sounds and cues are so seamless that you don't even really think about them, but they are essential to the experience. I fondly remember this chase on alarm level 3 or 4. I was in a chase for what had to have been more than 5 minutes, and I just couldn't seem to shake the pursuing Nazis. As I was trying to navigate the tight Paris streets and avoiding the traffic and newly spawned pursuers, I was accompanied by this exhilarating soundtrack that became more and more intense multiple times throughout my pursuit. In the end though, I managed to escape by hiding in the most Sean Devlin hiding spot of all time.
This looks like a good spot. Now then.
Like the original score, the licensed music is also phenomenal. It's got a neat selection of blues and jazz pieces from the era. Kind of. You're going to hear Nina Simone Feeling Good, and you may be thinking, wait, this isn't a World War II song? And you're right, it isn't, but who cares? It fits the game, the atmosphere so perfectly that now I associate the song with the Saboteur. I wasn't disappointed a single time when I entered the car and heard the crackling of the airwaves before Sean found the correct signal and the music started playing. Absolutely stellar. I hope my video doesn't get taken down or anything like that, because I am not making a video on the Saboteur without including its music in it. All of this is what creates the iconic art style of the Saboteur. There's one more crucial part that is nowadays somewhat overlooked, but it used to be a big deal back in the day. And I really don't understand why, as it's basically free real estate to push your creative vision for the game to enhance the feel and the atmosphere, and that is the user interface. The Saboteur's UI just screams character, and all these graphics like stained yellowish paper sheets, ink and blood spats, the fleur-de-lis everywhere, the subtle little animations for each UI element that appears on screen, the fantastic loading screens and transitions, even this little pin on the map instead of just a regular dot on the radar, and these red bars that keep popping up in the UI. All of this complements the feel of the 3D world that you're exploring. A good art director will use all of their tools available to convey their message, the emotions they want the game to evoke, and the Saboteur doesn't waste a single thing in this video game medium. Everything that you see on the screen comes together like a well-crafted tapestry, and combined with the incredible soundtrack produces an art style that is incredibly unique and memorable for a long time after you finish the game. Something happened in the AAA video game space where around 10 years ago, around the time PS4 and Xbox One came out, the developers don't really seem to care that much about the aesthetic of the UI anymore, and they don't even try to connect it to the direction of the game. There are outliers of course, but a lot of mainstream releases just use these boring Windows 8 styled menus that sometimes make me forget I'm playing a video game. I can't convey my disappointment when I pressed the start button for the first time when GTA 5 came out, and I was greeted by this ugly white and grey interface, completely devoid of any character whatsoever. As an IT person, it reminded me of a control panel from Microsoft Exchange or something. It was awful. Compare Forza Horizon to Need for Speed Most Wanted. Compare Call of Duty nowadays to Call of Duty back in the day. I know I may be cherry picking, but the abandonment of characteristic and unique UI images is definitely real. The Saboteur's UI is a masterpiece, and even today I'm trying to emulate its transitions in videos. GTA 5's UI looks like Microsoft Outlook and doesn't belong in a video game, and I will die on this hill. There's a place for minimalistic UI when a game is enhanced by it, otherwise minimalism belongs right there in the trash bin. I will take the Saboteur's in-your-face maximalist interface any day of the week instead of the white and grey rectangles.
Racing is my passion. I find little time for politics.
Sometimes racing is politics.
No, there is a difference.
You must forgive my ignorance, Herr Morini. We Germans are a simple people. Perhaps you would enlighten us further?
One's a hobby for rich assholes who can't get laid without a flashy car and a silly uniform. The other is racing.
Thankfully, the fantastic art direction isn't the only thing holding the Saboteur together. I also really enjoyed Sean's revenge story, and I liked pretty much all of the characters in the game, from Sean and his allies to the villains. And yes, while most of these guys don't seem to have that much depth to them in the beginning and feel like stereotypes more than anything else, some of them really develop in the second act and towards the end of the game. Sean Devlin is one of my favorite protagonists ever. He didn't choose the life of a rebel for any higher purpose or anything like that. It was purely because of his rage and lust for revenge due to his friend Jules getting killed at the hands of Kurt Dierker in the game's prologue. A death that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Sean's hot-headed nature. Sean throughout the game gets more and more consumed by guilt, which fuels his vendetta against Dierker. Throughout the game he will show some humanity though, especially towards Veronique, the sister of the deceased Jules, and Vittore, the man who took him in when he escaped from Ireland.
Climb up there and throw that Nazi piece of shit from the roof while I move in on the ground. Can you do that? It's a piece of piss. I do not know this phrase. It means yes.
Oh yeah, I failed to mention Sean is Irish, but I'm sure you got that from the clips in the video. Sean's Irish sarcasm and wit knows no bounds in his conversations with pretty much anyone. I adored every single conversation in this game, from the main story cutscenes to the side mission dialogue. All conversations would have at least a couple of absolutely hysterical lines, ranging from crude insults to sarcastic insults to teasing insults to philosophical insults, but mostly just insults. Many other characters also had sharp tongue and would bite back at Sean's remarks, which made for some hilarious exchanges.
If you're not too busy messing about with these Frenchies, could be I got a real job for you.
What's that? You need help changing Bishop's diapers?
That's just grand. See, somehow Bishop got in his head that you're not just another sheep-headed paddy fuck.
My other favorite character has to be Skylar Sinclair, a mysterious femme fatale who turns out is a British secret agent and Sean's longtime love interest. These two are hilarious together, can't seem to go a sentence without innuendos, always teasing each other, and generally making the situation uncomfortable for everyone else involved.
Brilliant. I'm parched.
Fuck this, I'm not going to be the third wheel. Take me back to the hotel.
If I may chime in.
It's not polite to eavesdrop. Didn't they teach you that in boarding school?
Quite the opposite, actually.
Perhaps you were too busy screwing your teachers to notice.
Please, we can't all die virgins.
I was looking forward to each part of the game with Skylar. These two together were hilarious and badass, and I enjoyed most other characters as well. Even the side mission givers had personality to them and a short story arc, which made me look forward to every interaction and dialogue that I could possibly squeeze from the game. Enter the seedy underground world of a saboteur living in 1940s Paris, where the women are sexy, the missions are epic, and the revenge is satisfying. So says the description on Good Old Games, and the revenge is indeed satisfying. The game's story didn't win any awards or anything like that. It's a pretty straightforward tale of revenge, but if the characters and the dialogue are engaging, then the story, at least to me, largely doesn't really even matter. The dialogue in this game is so far from politically correct that it took me completely off guard a handful of times. As I've grown accustomed to the stiff and sterile, cookie-cutter, empty, boring dialogue in games and media in the past 6 or 7 years or so, the conversations here felt real. This is how we actually talk, am I right? Me and my friends are constantly breaking each other's balls, making fun of each other, all so we can laugh together in the end. We make fun of each other, we make fun of everyone and everything else, and that is completely normal. Sean's and Skylar's romance was campy, over the top, and hilarious, but it resembled a real-life romance much better than anything BioWare put out ever, including the good Dragon Age and Mass Effect games.
I could kiss you right now. I'm going to kiss you right now.
Go fuck yourself!
The driving in the Saboteur is very fun. The game actually focuses on cars and driving a lot, as Sean is a mechanic and a race car driver, as is his arch-nemesis, Dirker. There's quite a few races here, which also play a major part in the game's story. Apart from the races, you'll be driving around Paris quite a lot, from mission to mission, from point of interest to point of interest, very similar to GTA. Sean can also climb walls, Assassin's Creed style. It's not as fluid though, you can't just hold one button to climb, you have to press space to jump on each ledge and window pane, and the detection for these can sometimes be hit or miss. Thankfully, due to the slower pace and more input required by me, it somehow rarely felt like Sean did something I didn't want him to do, which happens a lot to me in Assassin's Creed games. The added dimension of rooftops really enhances the guerrilla spirit of the Saboteur's gameplay, and I enjoyed the chases and the parkour across the rooftops. Whenever I'd reach a big objective area where I had to infiltrate a perimeter, I'd look for vantage points and telephone wires running across the streets to see if I could enter the base stealthily. Then I'd look for a sniper nest or any other place that might have an isolated Nazi so I could take him out with my hands and wear his uniform as a disguise. Then I'd maybe try picking off the stray guards with a sniper rifle and then move into the base. Of course, if you get bored of the stealth, you can just go in guns blazing. I really like that I could call in some mates to help me out, and with some upgrades these guys could kick some serious ass in the later parts of the game. I would usually call in these guys at the main gates to act as a diversion while I went in sneaky around the back. The objectives are actually quite varied, which surprised me a bit. There wasn't a single mission I hated or any objective type I got bored of. The main missions have a lot of gameplay twists and keep spicing it up all the time. The side content is a bit more consistent though, as in these missions you're usually liberating parts of Paris, but they usually have their own smaller spin on it too. Overall, the missions are pretty diverse and engaging. The gunplay is nothing special though. I felt the automatic weapons were a bit underpowered and weren't all that accurate. Sniper shots sometimes didn't register even when they clearly should have, and there's a lack of any melee weapons apart from Sean's fist. Your only gadgets here are, well, explosives, some dynamite sticks on a timer, or some dynamite sticks with a remote detonator. These, however, combined with the ability to pick up German uniforms and blend in, along with my silenced pistol, made for just enough variety so I didn't get bored by the end. There's also some perks you can unlock that additionally spice up the gameplay when things start getting stale. The perks you have to earn though. Each category has 3 perks with increasingly more difficult requirements. Some of these were a cakewalk, some of them though were quite challenging, but none of them were too tedious apart from collecting every vehicle in the game. Thankfully, you can buy 2 free perks at a black market dealer, which I use for those challenges.
What you wanted to talk to me about?
I can see that you are a busy man, Irishman. I can provide you with the tools you need to conduct your personal business.
The black market's currency in underground Paris is contraband. Throughout the missions, you'll be picking up wine, chocolate bars, cigarettes, jewelry. All of this is instantly converted to simple numbers for the player. There's no unnecessary and convoluted crafting systems in this game. Just get enough contraband and buy yourself some new guns and upgrades. Such a breath of fresh air when seemingly every open world game since has these collectible components and crafting systems, which I'm so done with. Jesus Christ, please stop with this shit, please, 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 please.
There's the checkered flag, and... my God! The Europa Cup goes to Rolf Becker driving the Red Phoenix!
Despite borrowing so much from many other games, the Saboteur's gameplay is rather straightforward and it works for the game nicely. I would have loved a bit more gadgets for the acts of sabotage, but hey, blowing stuff up never got old and the effects and sounds for the explosions are very satisfying. The gameplay elements don't overstay their welcome, same as the story and the characters. Quite on the contrary actually, the game kind of ends rather abruptly. Don't get me wrong, the final mission is okay and the game concludes nicely, it's just that there's good 3 or 4 missions missing up until the finale. The game's second act is really well fleshed out and starts building up this massive revolt, where it feels like the third act would have all-out warfare across Paris, while you're trying to tie up loose ends before going after Dirker. As it stands, there is no third act. You never find out what happens to that lady Franziska, who throughout the game shows up alongside Dirker and acts like a secondary antagonist. I feel like she was supposed to play a larger part in the story, especially how she's present in some key moments throughout the game. You also never find out what happened to a certain Spaniard, but at the risk of spoilers, I won't go into that. The game just gives you the final mission out of the blue, which is so depressing. I hope you got by now how much I love the Saboteur, and I'm absolutely heartbroken that this game never got the 5 or 6 more months it needed in the oven, or a sequel which the game's ending teases.
No, it's not over. I'm just getting started.
No, Sean, you are not. The game has a lot of elements where you can see they were rushed or straight up unfinished and unexplained. The countryside looks rough. While pretty in color, the hills and meadows surrounding Paris felt like an initial draft with missing details and has some very janky geometry. Some textures can be downright hideous too and stick out like a sore thumb. There's this chateau that is inaccessible, which was supposed to be the place for a mission where you'd blow up some V2 rockets. You were supposed to be able to upgrade weapons with different attachments and also vehicles. There was supposed to be a secret Nazi base inside a mountain that was supposed to be the final mission. It would contain a biolab where the terror squad is produced and some prototype jet airplanes. It was supposed to have an airstrip inside the mountain. These are all images from Jason Hazelrod's website, who was an artist that worked on the Saboteur. There's a lot of cool stuff here and I loved scraping the internet for any and all information I could gather up about the current content of the Saboteur. Unfortunately, I couldn't find all that much. I'll leave some links in the description, namely Jason's website and some other stuff I found. Apparently someone has a very early build of the game for the Xbox, which looks a lot like it's built straight on the Mercenaries 1 engine. If you're watching this video, hey man, mind sharing that, I need to play it. There's also this mod on Nexus which attempts to restore what they could find from the leftovers in the game files. Unfortunately, the game can break at various points throughout the playthrough, so I didn't install it. The game is somewhat glitchy already and feels a bit unstable, with some effects occasionally bugging out. The last thing I wanted was to add some more glitches to it. If you're planning on playing the game on PC, it can be a bit tricky nowadays. The original game has a notorious glitch with the world map and overall performance issue. This, however, was fixed by Good Old Games when they got the game for their platform. So if you're gonna buy it, make sure to get it there. And if you own it already on Steam or Origin, just get the GOG version. It's fixed and DRM free, so you can find it on the internet with ease.
I think I'm in love.
Rolf Becker?
Your new identity. You'll be posing as an amateur German driver. My friends in London made all the arrangements.
What now?
Now, I suggest you start practicing. You'll only get one shot at this, and there's no trophy for second place.
What it all could have been. We're nearing the end of this video, and in my first script I had some really strong words to say against EA. A lot of profanity and emotions. I was just so angry after going through all the concept art and interviews after the game came out. I just started typing stuff that came into my mind, but honestly, I don't want my channel to go down that path. What I'm going to say is, I wish video game publishers would have a bit more moral and foresight, honestly. The Saboteur was under doubts and micromanagement while Pandemic was under the EA. They weren't happy with World War II setting, they weren't sure about the black and white filter, as it was apparently deemed to, heaven forbid, a developer pour their heart and soul into their art and let people enjoy it. Let's stop chasing trends that other people set. Why don't you let your developers experiment a bit and let them innovate and potentially set a trend themselves? EA Games had a habit of buying up the competition and then simply closing the studios down, not unlike what Microsoft and Embracer Group are doing today. Sure, Pandemic's previous game, Mercenaries 2, didn't meet the goals financially, allegedly, but you don't shut down this oasis of passion and creativity for that. Why did you even buy the company in the first place? What was even the play here? Why not sell them and their IP to some other publisher then? Honestly, I don't think I understand capitalism sometimes, and I resent the fact that it has such a big role in pretty much all of art forms. Any kind of art, be it books, music, movies. These things aren't pharmaceuticals or processed foods or just any other utilitarian software. Video games are art too, and they should be treated in a different way. It's been 15 years since EA Games shut down Pandemic Studios, but in 15 years more I'll still be singing the Saboteur's praises, and there still probably won't be anything like it.
Son of a bitch!
This was a bit longer than I expected. If any of the developers of the Saboteur watch this video, I want to say thank you. I love what you made, you're amazing. Everyone else who watched this video until the end, you're amazing too. Click that bell so you know when I post the next one, and until then, see you soon.